Hello, I'm Sara Santosh and welcome to Southall TV News Roundup. In international news, Australia has a new Prime Minister after Tony Abbott was ousted as leader of the centre-right Liberal Party by Malcolm Turnbull. Mr Abbott received 44 votes to Mr Turnbull's 54 in the opinion polls. The new Prime Minister is Australia's fourth since 2013, and he is expected to take up office when Tony Abbott officially resigns. Julie Bishop, who is the Foreign Minister, was voted to remain Deputy Leader of the party. Mr Turnbull praised Tony Abbott's achievements, but said that Australia needed to have the economic vision, a leadership that explains the great challenges and opportunities we face. In other news, hundreds of migrants have been stranded at the Serbia-Hungarian border after the Hungarian government closed the frontier with a new razor wire fence. New Hungarian laws came into effect this week, which makes it a criminal offence to damage the 13-foot razor wire fence alongside the border with Serbia. The penalties imposed are either prison or deportation. Hungary have taken the drastic measures in order to try and restore order after more than 500,000 migrants arrived at the EU borders this year, compared to 280,000 last year. Police buses will now take applicants seeking asylum to registration centres. In national news, Labour's new leader, Jeremy Corbyn, faced his first Prime Minister's questions in Parliament this week. Rather than the usual antics that are frequently seen, Mr Corbyn asked David Cameron questions that had been emailed to him from the general public, as he tried what he called a different style, with a view of making the weekly sessions less theatrical and more of a focus on substantial issues. The Prime Minister was very open to the idea. Questions were asked on topics surrounding housing, tax credits and mental health cuts. The environment within Parliament was described as being much calmer this week. In further news, the head of MI5, Andrew Parker, has advised that advances in technology are allowing terrorist groups to communicate out of the reach of the authorities. Ministers are preparing legislation on the powers for carrying out electronic surveillance. Britain is now on the most serious threats with regards to security. 6 alleged terror plots have been stopped in the past 12 months. In local news, MP Virendra Sharma has called for insurance companies to stop ripping off drivers in Ealing and Southall. The Financial Conduct Authority will release a report in the next few weeks on the situation regarding auto renewals. Mr Sharma is taking action to save local drivers £1.4 million on their car insurance. The price comparison website, Money Supermarket, found that auto-renewal of car insurance was costing the UK drivers £1.3 billion, and practices used by the insurance companies are making it harder for the consumers to secure a better deal. Virendra Sharma is calling on the Financial Conduct Authority to take decisive action to stop the auto-renewal rip-off. Now it's time for this week's political analysis. Let's cross over to our political correspondent, Imran Khan.
Hello, my name's Imran Khan and welcome to my weekly political update. Last week we talked about the mayoral election in London next year, and we mentioned how social and affordable housing would be right at the top of the agenda, possibly the most important topic of this forthcoming election. Well, currently through Parliament and the House of Lords is a bill by the current government which is forcing housing associations to sell their property at a discounted rate to their tenants. It's called the right to buy. The right to buy your housing association property at a discount. Well, how did this all come about? Well, go back a few months during the general election, when the polls showed it was quite neck and neck, and Ed might actually do something. Sorry, Ed, you were never going to win. But anyway, the Tories panicked and decided, what can we do? Well, let's have this right to buy policy for housing associations. It was so popular for Maggie when she did it in the 80s, let's do it again. Well, the papers like the Mail and the Express loved it. They said, fantastic, it's offering ordinary working people the opportunity to buy their own property. But is it a great idea? Did they really look into it that deep? Well, let's rewind back into the 80s. Margaret Thatcher introduced a right to buy policy for council housing. She said that ordinary council tenants could buy their properties at a discounted rate and get on the housing ladder. Great idea, you might think. Maybe. But what actually happened? Well, people took up the right to buy and bought their properties at massive discounts, often in affluent areas. But here's the problem. Firstly, they sold those properties later on at a massive profit to private buyers. Secondly, councils who actually received the money for these properties were forced by the Thatcher government not to use their money and their assets to build more council housing. So the upshot was, council housing was sold off, no more new council and social housing was built, the population increased, the supply of social housing went down, demand went up, and hey bingo, we have a price bubble and a housing crisis. And also, since that right to buy policy, it's been found out that over 40% of those properties are now in the hands of private landlords who are actually on the open market renting them privately. So this lack of affordable social housing really stemmed from Thatcher's policy in the 80s. And we haven't built enough social housing in the meantime, successive governments, Labour and Conservative, to match the demand. So why is this right to buy bill so great? Well, it isn't, because all it's doing is forcing housing associations, who are now the main players in the social housing market, not local authorities, to sell their properties at a discounted rate. Two problems with this. Firstly, a stock of housing that they have. Housing associations have also built houses and flats. Why should they be forced to sell assets of theirs which they've built at a discounted rate? If you had a house and the government said you got to sell it at half price, would you do it? No, I don't think you would. Secondly, George Osborne, in this current legislation, has also said the housing associations must cut their annual rent by 1%, further diminishing the income they have. Add on the welfare reforms and the bedroom tax, income for housing associations is dwindling all the time. And it's actually come to a point where a couple of the big ones have said, well, we're not actually building anymore. Why should we? A lot of housing associations also borrowed against their assets. And if their assets are actually reducing in their values, then the banks are going to say, well, hang on, we borrowed you X amount of money against your assets. They're not even worth half that now. So the housing associations are currently in crisis. But there may be a glimmer of hope on the horizon. When this bill went through the Lords looked at it and said, well, hang on, we can't allow this to happen. They actually put in an amendment backed by Labour into the bill saying those with charitable status cannot be forced to sell their assets at a loss. How does this help housing associations? Well, the majority of them have charitable status. So this clause, this amendment passed by the Lords, could mean that housing associations are not forced to sell their properties at a discounted rate. So what's going to happen? Well, the bill comes back to Parliament and Parliament will discuss it. Will the government accept this clause? I don't think so, but let's see. They may see sense. Because what will happen, housing associations will be forced to sell their properties at a discounted rate. They won't buy anymore and we'll be back to the social housing crisis. How will it improve? How will people get social and affordable housing to buy or even to rent? Well, watch this space. It's going through Parliament and we'll see what happens. That's enough from me this week. I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Imran. That's it for now. I'm Sara Santosh. Thank you for watching Southall TV News Roundup. I shall be back next week with more news.